Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, back with a sort of untraditional Valentine's cards. Because again, they don't say Happy Valentine's Day. I don't know what it is. I just like making cards in the general theme, but not specifically Happy Valentine's Day. I went on about this in a recent video. Anywho, I was in a very dusty rose sort of mood. So I sat down and just started experimenting. So I have some of Simon's 120 pound smooth white cardstock. They are A2 sized pieces for the moment. So 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm just doing a very simple ink blended background with Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink. Just kind of starting, like I'm using my blending tool. I'm starting from the center and just kind of pulling the color out. I don't want it, I don't want solid color. It doesn't need to be perfect because I am going to add some splatter and do some stenciling and then add, other elements. So I'm not at all concerned about getting it perfect. Also, my Victorian Velvet blending tool, I'm pretty sure this is the second time maybe I've used this color to do blending. Victorian Velvet is one of those colors that just kind of, I don't think about. I have all the Distress Oxide ink pads. And this is just one of those colors that I just rarely ever think about, don't reach for. With my little Distress inks, I never reach for this color. But every time I do now, I love it. It is such a pretty color, and it just doesn't get the recognition it deserves. So anywho, I did 2 little backgrounds. Of course, I want to add splatter. So I have my Distress Oxide spray here, but I wanted it darker. So I kind of went through some ridiculous hoops, but I was experimenting. So I have the Oxide spray. I shook it up really well because with the Oxide sprays, they do settle. You want to shake them basically like a bell. You don't want to shake them up and down because it can start coming out the knot. It can make a big mess. But you want to shake them up really, really well to mix up that pigment and the liquids and all the things. But I wanted it darker. So to do that, I added just the teensiest bit of aged mahogany Distress ink refill. The Distress ink refills are extremely concentrated. They're awesome. Wonderful. I probably could have just used the aged mahogany Distress Oxide spray. Possibly ended up with the same result, but this is just the method I was doing. So splatter those backgrounds just lightly. I didn't want a ton of splatter. I just, I wanted that little bit of splatter, but I didn't need a lot because what I'm doing now is going to be crazy fun. So I have some Stickles glitter gel. I've used a couple of the other colors. These came out a year ago. Whenever they came out, of course, I got the whole pack of 6. And then they sat forever and I never did anything with them. And then I've played with a few of them. It's got a very different consistency. It's like it says, it's a glitter gel. It's different, but I like it because once it dries, because of that gel, whatever's in it, it evaporates and you're just left with this glitter, but it's not falling anywhere. It is fused to the cardstock. So I applied it over these layering heart stencils that I used in a recent video. I'd used the larger stencils in the set. This time I'm just using one of the smaller heart stencils. I put it on an angle. I'm working on my Wendy Vecchi magnetic mat. I had put some washi tape, just rolled up a little piece of washi tape to hold the cardstock in place. Put the stencil on an angle. And then just applied the glitter gel. This is Asteroid. And it's all the Stickles glitter gels. They're interesting. They have all these different types of glitters. There's fine glitters and chunky and confetti and all that stuff. Again, fun to play with. So I applied that. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing to the second card front. So I just apply it with one of my palette knives. With this stuff, I find I won't use my big, wide Thermoweb Stencil Pal scraper that I show with other products. I find that ends up scraping out too much because, again, these have all these big chunks and little chunks. It's an interesting mix. But after I applied it, I took a little piece of, I have Glad Press and Seal. I've shown this in many videos. I use Press and Seal on all my jars of pastes and glitter gels and those sorts of things. I do link to it because Simon Says Stamp does carry it for international people. You know, you can pick this up at the grocery store, that sort of thing. But for a lot of people, this is not easy to come by. Highly recommend it. I've had this box in my craft room for literal years. I just cut off a small piece. I seal my jars with that, and I just keep reusing it on that jar until I manage to poke a hole in it or something. But it keeps your jars sealed more, so they last longer. Some of my pastes have not dried out at all. And things can dry, you know, they're water-based products. They will dry out. But anywho, sealed that all up, cleaned off my stencil and my palette knife. I let those backgrounds completely dry. Glitter gels take longer to dry than other glitter pastes, or than other pastes. I find glitter pastes in general do take longer to dry because of the nature of the product. You know, they're more liquidy and it's like there's more to like dry and evaporate. So I let those completely dry, and then I cut down those backgrounds. And then my main sentiment here is this Love Your Guts. Love it. Just love it. Total CZ design sort of thing. I love her sentiments. I've gone on and on about my, you know, obsession with all things CZ design. So I die cut some of Lawn Fawn's, is it pink eraser or eraser pink? Pencil eraser cardstock, which was a happy little coincidence. It goes very nicely with Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink. So I die cut those 3 times, stacked them together, and then decided I wanted to intensify those die cuts a little bit more, like make them a little deeper than the background. So then I pulled out my Aged Mahogany Distress Oxide ink. This is another one I rarely reach for. You guys know, I like my like brighter rainbow color, you know, that sort of thing. But Aged Mahogany and Victorian Velvet are just so nice together. And then you had the silver, and I was really happy with how like all these like random things I started grabbing are just coming together, and the colors were working, and it was just, these were really fun to make. So anywho, I took another blending tool. This was another one I've never blended with, and now it's like I need to reach for Aged Mahogany more often. This is a really gorgeous color, especially on this cardstock. Lawn Fawn cardstock, if you do not have any, I highly recommend it. I got all the colors way back whenever it was when they started releasing cardstock. Really good quality. Some of their colors are very unique. I love it. But I'm also obsessed with Lawn Fawn. Anyway, back to the card. So I blended the ink onto those die cuts just lightly, you know, to give them that nice depth. And then I pulled out a piece of Lawn Fawn vellum and used my anti-static powder tool. And I'm going to stamp some butterflies from the Butterfly Kisses set from Simon Says Stamp. Don't know how I got from hearts to butterflies. The set was sitting here because it's newer, and I was like wanting to use it regardless. And I was like, ooh, couple little butterflies. I was going through my embossing drawer. I came across some embossing powder that I was like, this could work with these colors. I think this will work. So I stamped the butterflies with clear embossing ink onto that vellum, and I'm using Wendy Vecchi Pink Peony embossing powder. So poured that over them, and then I'm going to melt those with my heat tool. When it comes to vellum and heat embossing, keep an eye on it. It literally takes seconds. Like, even though I've sped up in editing the footage, it literally takes seconds to melt embossing powders on vellum. Like, huge difference between that and embossing on cardstock, that sort of thing, because vellum is so much thinner. So quickly melted those, and then I'm going to use the coordinating wafer die to die cut them. And then I decided off camera, I stamped another butterfly from the same set, just a smaller one, and did the same thing. I heat embossed them with that pink peony embossing powder, and then die cut those with the coordinating wafer dies. So I have a larger butterfly and a smaller butterfly for these cards. And then I also pulled out this older stamp set. This is the Simple Sentiments 02, also from CZ Design, of course. Tons of good sentiments in here. But I pulled out the So Very Grateful for You stamp, put it on an acrylic block, and I'm going to stamp this onto some fog cardstock with clear embossing ink. And I'm going to heat emboss this with the same pink peony embossing powder. And on camera, like looking at this footage as I'm doing this voiceover, it's harder to read. In real life, it's easier to see. But I struggle with lighting in videos and all the things, you know, all the things. But it is legible. So I stamped the sentiment twice, heat embossed it with that pink peony embossing powder, melted it with my heat tool, And then those I'm going to die cut with the smallest of the sentiment label wafer die set. So I'm going to just tape the wafer die into place with my washi tape and then just run that through my die cut machine. Once I have both of these sentiments die cut, I'm just going to use my little paper trimmer here just to trim off the ends closer to the sentiment. So I have 2 little sentiment strips. Once those are trimmed down, I am going to make my card bases, which is more fog cardstock. I just cut a sheet in half and I'm scoring it at 5.5 inches. So these will be top folding A2 size cards. And like I'd said, with the card fronts, with the blending in the hearts and hearts stenciled in the glitter paste, those I trimmed down off camera to slightly smaller than A2, which you'll see at the end. So with my card bases, I got to do something on the inside. So I just grabbed that same layering heart stencil, also put it on a bit of an angle onto the inside of the card, and then I just lightly blended that Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide ink, kind of in the same way as I did on the front, like concentrating the color more in the center and then just letting it kind of fade out, but also not going real heavy-handed with it. You know, I just wanted those hearts, wanted the color, so did that to the inside of both my cards. And then I decided I wanted to add those butterflies that I heat embossed as well. I wanted to bring those to the inside of the card because I decided not to stamp any other sentiments. I thought about it, went through some of my sentiments, and I kept like looking at the Happy Valentine's Day ones, and I was like, no. Although that would look really cute too. You could stamp a nice little Happy Valentine's Day. Again, can kind of be whatever you want. So instead though, I just stamped those butterflies with that aged mahogany Distress Oxide ink. And then once those are stamped, I can now start assembling my card fronts. So to do that, all I did was take some craft tacky glue. I applied the glue directly behind the body of the butterfly, left the wings so that the wings kind of pop up a little bit, creates a little bit of dimension. Did the same thing with the Love Your Guts sentiment. Just added little dabs of craft tacky glue all along the back of this, and then flipped it over and adhered it. Again, adhering over glitter paste, I've talked about this. When you're adhering over something that's been embossed or like stenciled, whatever, with a glitter paste or it's a glitter cardstock, you need to either use a liquid glue or like a foam tape to make sure things stay adhered, because glitter just wants to pop everything off that you try and adhere over it, which is right. It should, in a sense. It's like, why would you cover glitter? But liquid glue works great, as does foam tape. So I used foam tape on the back of the panel. Just Simon's Big Mama foam tape. I always use my little Reinker Tim Holtz snips. They're Teflon coated. People have been asking me about that. I use that little tiny pair of snips. I link to them every time I use them. I use those with my foam tapes because they're Teflon coated so they don't stick. So I use them to cut my foam tapes or anything that might be sticky. Wonderful scissors. I have the shears. I showed those at some point in the video. I have the normal sized ones. I have the little snips. I have extra pairs of them. I have pairs in my kitchen. I have a pair in my garage for like gardening stuff. Best scissors ever. Anywho. For my embellishments, I started with some Studio Claudia bling. I have some Stormcloud pearls, just a few of them. And then another happy coincidence. I went through I literally have a drawer full of Nouveau crystal drops because, you know, I'm the gal that has to have all the colors of all the things. And then every once in a blue moon like this, it comes in handy because I have this is Moroccan red crystal drops. Perfect match to the aged mahogany color. Just perfect match. So added a few of those. Little swirls, little dots here and there. Once I've applied them, I like to tap my card base onto, I just tap it on the ink pad, whatever works. The tapping just smooths everything out, flattens them a little bit more so they look more like enamel dots. And then you just got to set these aside to dry because the crystal drops do take a while to dry. Don't stick your finger in it. It's always tempting, but don't do it. Let those dry. Once they're complete, these cards are done. And they're all glittery and shimmery and shiny from the embossing and the crystal drops, all the fun stuff. So, as always, like I said, there is a supply list with links to everything in the description box below the video. I will also link to my blog post in the blog post is picture links to all the supplies, so you can check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!